This is the Tame Aperture podcast.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Hello, Hal, do you read me?
Do you read me, Hal? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you. I read you. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
Come on down and jump some of this shit.
You'll always have backup. Sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Welcome to the Tame Aperture podcast, where we talk all things movies from first-time directors, indie films, art house, and much, much more. Today on the podcast, we talk the 2021 Netflix film by director Kim Tae-Hyoung titled Eighth Night. With prayer beads in one hand and an axe in another, a monk hunts down a millennia-old spirit that's possessing humans and unleashing hell on Earth. The film was released in July of 2021 on Netflix. I'm Gabe Vienendahl, filmmaker, film instructor, and movie enthusiast, and I'm joined, as always, by co-host, veteran podcaster, and editor, Mr. Alan Martindale. And again, joining us on the last episode of Horror Month is filmmaker Brandon Richardson. Hey guys, how the hell are you?
Good, man. This movie, I'm also going to call it just Supernatural, the movie.
Yeah.
This is like watching a long Supernatural episode.
Yeah, there was I think, okay, I'm going to go Korean. I want to bring a little international flair. It wasn't my first choice, but it was the choice that was most accessible. I figured Alan and Brandon both have Netflix, so they can access it easily. Because what I found out, by the way, is when you get into Korean film, not all the best films are accessible on streaming platforms. And what you have to do is buy the DVD. And the DVDs cost $20, $30. And I was like, well, that's not happening for this podcast.
Yeah, because imports, right?
Yeah. So I was like, what's accessible? Pull it up. Of course, you Google it. Here it is. Eighth Night comes up. And admittedly, look, if you read, for me at least, when I read the synopsis, I was like, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. A freaking monk traveling around with prayer beads and an axe. Like, who's not interested?
Hell
right?
yeah.
When you say monk and axe in the same sentence, sign me up, right? Sign me up for that. But then it just kind of turns into a little bit more of, and look, you say Supernatural, the movie, and I like Supernatural, the TV show.
Me too.
And so I didn't hate this movie, and we'll get into the depths of it, but it wasn't the setup that I expected, right? It wasn't the same. It wasn't what I had hoped for.
It almost felt a little like, and this might be a little bit of a stretch, like Supernatural meets Lord of the Rings a little bit.
Dude, I definitely picked up a Lord of the Rings vibe.
Yeah, right? Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one, because I definitely, from the get-go, it kind of feels like Lord of the Rings.
Contemporary.
Yeah, contemporary Lord of the Rings, for sure.
What? Yeah, I didn't get the Lord of the Rings vibe. Maybe I'm just not a Lord of the Rings aficionado like Brandon. He is actually Frodo on Halloween. That's what he dressed up as when he had long hair. But Brandon, let's talk about that real quick. Hold your hair up for us.
Oh, yes.
Brandon cut his hair. For those watched previous episodes of the podcast, you can see here now Brandon, oh, look at that. And Brandon's going to donate it. What a good man.
Yep, some little kid will be wearing these lovely locks.
Going to have those Jesus locks on his, and he's going to love life. And I love that. That's great.
So, yeah. Haven't figured out what I'm going to do with it. Maybe I'll shave it. I don't know. We'll see.
Is it going to be like on that Simpsons Treehouse of Horror when Homer gets the hair transplant?
Yes.
Steak?
Dude, that was like a classic one.
Epic. I just picture Brennan's hair taking over some poor kid.
Hey, wait, you just wrote out a premise for we can just steal a Simpsons idea and make a whole movie from it.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Because look, this film here, Eighth Night on Netflix. It kind of had, I mean, not that it's that same thing, but the concept being that there's this monster that takes over bodies.
Mm-hmm.
This is Brandon's hair possesses people, right? A young kid.
Call it transplant.
I like it.
I call it Harry.
Let's get it in development right away.
I'm listening.
Let's end the podcast and go right into a writer's meeting. Let's go. No, this is so anyway, it wasn't what I expected initially when I watched it. And so it is what it is in terms of the expectation going in. So but I wanted to bring a Korean flair, and that was the original concept. Was like, I want it for this horror month. This is our last episode of horror month. I was like, man, I really want to bring in something Korean, because a lot of their films that I've seen, and I haven't seen them all. I wouldn't consider myself a Korean cinema aficionado, but the actual films that I have seen by filmmakers from Korea are amazing. Like most of everything I've seen, I've loved.
It's
So
well, and then so I was thinking about this, and I have a question. Do you think that, like, you think of Train to Busan, you think of Parasite? I Saw the Devil.
yeah.
We did an episode on that. Are we getting the best of Korean cinema here in the US, or are they just adeptly talented at making films? Because this movie is not great, but even as a miss, I think it's good. Like, I still really enjoyed it.
We're 100% in the same boat, because I was thinking about this when we were coming into the podcast, and I thought it's not good, or it's not great, it's not bad.
No,
It
I
just-
still enjoyed it, but it's not. Yeah,
It
it's
just
not.
kind of is.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, you go, man, are these guys just that much? And I mean this sincerely. Are they just that much better as film? I'm serious, as technical filmmakers. Because the other thing I looked at, this is his first film.
Is it really? And this is
This
an ambitious project for your first film.
This is his first film, which he wrote and directed, according to IMDb, right? So maybe there's something missing there, but I don't know. I think technically, yeah, I agree. It's not a grand slam, but it might be, like, if we go with a baseball analogy, it might be a double. It's like a good, solid
Yeah.
ground rule double.
I feel like it's kind of it's like the analogy of, everyone says, the music was so great in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and whatever. Well, it's because all the shitty songs didn't go anywhere. Just the classics remain.
Good
I
point.
think there is a filtration system happening with Korean film as well.
But also,
Because think of, there's so many filmmakers there as well, and it's not all going to be gold.
right, of course not. But to me, it just feels like, from the Korean films I've seen, which, again, not a lot either. I haven't seen everything they have to offer, but it feels like the cynicism isn't there that we get here. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of cash grabs that get filtered to us. Whereas, like, how many superhero movies can we have? How many remakes can we have? How many reboots can we have? And it just feels like there's so many cash grabs and banking on nostalgia. It just feels like a lot of cynicism. And I just, from the few films I've seen from Korea, it feels like they're making these projects because they love the projects themselves. Like, you can tell for this one, you can tell he loves what he's doing. He loves the story. He's got a story that just kind of has to be told, and he went out and he made it happen. Parasite, same thing. I Saw the Devil, same thing. Like, there's just, to me, it just feels like they're more passion projects than what we get a lot of the time here, outside of independent film.
I definitely get a passion project vibe off of this, because in a lot of ways there were some amateurish sort of moves that you could pick up. Parasite, for example, was way more polished, and you could tell it was a much more professional crew. But it definitely, and the acting was superb. Question for you both: did you watch it in Korean or with English dub?
Yeah, so for those listening, when you watch it on Netflix, you can dub it in English. It gives you the option. I went with Korean. I got to watch it in the native language, and then I got to have it. I'd rather just read the subtitles for me.
Yeah, when it came on, it automatically did the dub, and I was like, I can't. I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah,
And then I realized that you can switch it to where it's in Korean and you just have the subtitles, and then it was much better experience. The dubbing. Why can't they get dubbing right? Why is it so difficult to get dubs? I don't know, to still not take you out of the moment. I don't understand.
Because the lips don't ever, will never line up.
It's not even that, though. It's the acting is so hammy.
Well, they just can't get good people to do it. It's like
That what it is?
It's an actor cash grab. Like, oh, I'll just go
Yeah.
read all this stuff. Done.
Good
And
point.
look, it's got to be incredibly hard to be
Sure.
able to voice act something you didn't act.
Sure.
Because a lot of times it's not the same actor, right? They'll bring someone else. Like in this case, of course, it's a person who's, unless they're extremely fluent in English, and do you know what I mean? Like they got to find someone that has those nuances. So it's hard to act something you didn't actually do.
Did you notice a couple of the subtitles? It said in English.
No.
Like
I
a
didn't
couple
see
of the
that.
lines that said in English. So I'm like, do they speak in English?
Yeah, I don't remember hearing any English lines in this at all. So
Well, there
Yeah.
wasn't any English lines, but it was really a few times it came up just like in English, and then it said that. I wonder if just someone screwed up at Netflix. Like, sorry.
Totally could happen with transcriptions. And yeah. No, I watched it with the subtitles, and like Alan said, it made it a lot better. Look,
Yeah.
I can't do it the other way. What did you do, Brandon? You did it that way as well, I'm assuming? Yeah. Which
Like
is,
it.
which,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
can't do it.
would much rather do that.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm not out here saying that every Korean film is a grand slam. What I'm saying is, in some way or another, everything that I'm seeing come out of there is good. And I like what you're talking about, Alan, which is like, man, it's an intangible, right? Which is like passion. Like are we just doing this in a formulaic process to do what we do? Cause that's what we do. We're just going to make a movie, but we have no real true passion behind it. Like it's funny. I almost think things like that can be, they can come through on the screen. Like
I totally agree.
and I know it sounds weird because it's not a tangible thing, right? You can't be like, oh, he was passionate or he wasn't. But something in the way that it's put together and the way that they structure it, you can feel it. So it definitely is a difference there in terms of the passion. Like they want to tell stories, and whether those stories seem to be good or bad or whatever, like they want to tell them, and they want to tell them in the best way that they can at that moment.
Yeah, and look, I'm not ignorant to the fact that film is a business and studios, they want to make money. And I understand that totally, but it also feels like, these Korean films that we've been able to watch, feels like there's some more creative freedom there. There's a little bit more liberty to kind of do what they want, do things and maybe that's what resonates with us is we're not seeing that kind of stuff here as much. Like, and I'm not besmirching anyone who loves Marvel movies, go for it. Like, look at me. Like I was ecstatic to watch Halloween Kills, and that was a straight up cash grab, like it was just a total cash grab.
Well, can I keep your thought? But those kind of movies too are cash grabs from the start. They go, we're going to do 3 movies.
Right. Exactly. I mean, they announced the next 2 Halloween movies right after the release of the 2018 one. So for sure,
spoils the next 2 movies because you're like, well, obviously he's not going to die in the second one.
Right.
Clearly.
and so it did feel like Halloween Kills just felt like it's a bridge to get to Halloween Ends, which will come out next year. Like it just didn't feel like it needed to be made at all. And there's a lot of that in what we get in our pop culture here. And I just think it's a little refreshing to see. And it may be that way in Korea too. Like they may be doing that here, and we're just only getting the really good projects because they're so refreshing and because they're just passion projects and they have a little bit more creative freedom. I think as audiences, we enjoy seeing filmmakers, good or bad. I think we enjoy seeing filmmakers and storytellers tell their stories. Like when movies go to shit, it's very easy, and it happens a lot of the time where the studios are blamed. There's too much studio interference. They wanted to change this and that. And so I think when we get the sense that this is a story told from the heart that they just had to tell, I think it resonates with us for some reason.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point, which is when you're able to take away all the people in the mix and let one person really kind of be the creative force behind something. If they're good at it, it shines through. And it actually dilutes and taints the project if you have 10 other voices coming in and saying, hey, do this, do that, do this. And in this case, it almost feels like they do a pretty good job at just letting the creative head and the director or the writer kind of explore his vision or her vision, right? So,
well, let me give you an example. So we also watched Bad Taste, which is Peter Jackson's first feature. It's a terrible movie.
Horrible.
It's horrible. But both you and I, Gabe, talked about how it's very endearing because this was just a movie that he wanted to make. And it just felt, you could feel the love for the project come through on every single frame. Even though it was a terrible movie, objectively it's bad. We both appreciated that and it resonated with us.
Yeah, and also just one of those things that I always say, which is like, you made a movie. Like the fact that in an independent sense, like you went through the process, that's very difficult. And then on top of that, your passion shined through. So that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we're getting here. And this is kind of how I felt about this movie going in. And so a little bit about the overall storyline, it really is kind of that synopsis, but it didn't come across quite as maybe horrific as the synopsis. For me, when I read the synopsis, I thought it felt really horror. It felt like we're going to see some slashing. We're going to see some axe grinding, monk taking people out.
Yeah.
And knowing a little bit, and you think about when we watched I Saw the Devil, or if you watch a couple of the other Korean films, it's like they're not afraid of gore.
Right.
So I was thinking we're going to see a lot of that. And there were a couple of hints of it, but it wasn't explicit in this film. Not saying that's good or bad. It just wasn't in your face.
Quite mild.
It was mild. It was more toned down. And so the story is essentially this ancient monster, which represents, I guess, fear and darkness and kind of the Eye of Sauron. So I get what you're saying now in terms of the Lord of the Rings, right? It's that darkness that can envelop the earth, right? Like it take over the earth. I get now. When you guys said that, I was like, oh, but now I'm talking through it. I go, oh yeah, that makes sense. I think that's what this monster encompasses. And it has 8 nights to go through these different passages and these different gateways until it becomes fully powerful, right? And this monk who has gone through this horrific event in his past with his family being killed in a car accident, and then he became a monk and yada, 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 has to be the one to prevent it or stop the monster from reaching its full potential.
He has to reunite with the source of his power on this planet, which is the eyes.
Right.
The ring.
Yeah.
The ring, right.
The ring.
Even the way they do the mythology, where they tell you the mythology right up front, felt very Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the animation sequences. I say animation because I don't know what else to call it. That just felt very Lord of the Rings. It felt familiar. I love Lord of the Rings. Like I love fantasy. I think that's fun. And
music was similar as well.
Yeah. The score. I was going to talk about that. I thought the score was great. Actually,
I love the score.
I think it enhanced this movie so much.
It made it much more tolerable for me. Yes.
Agreed. Yeah, totally.
Brandon seems to have not liked the movie. I think we're sitting in a middle territory, and we'll talk about our ratings later. Brandon seems very as if this movie was very distasteful.
It wasn't distasteful. We'll get into it.
Well, no, that's what we're here for now. Get into that shit. Let's go. Give us some thoughts.
The story was a little convoluted for my taste.
Very.
And that's always difficult for me to I mean, I'll get
what about it though?
I like reveals, but when they kind of jump over each other to try to be the bigger, I'm like, no, dude, you're making it too complicated. Let's just, yeah. I will say the acting was pretty good. I was pleased with the acting with the monk and the young monk. I think a couple of people kind of got wasted, just not being able to do much. like the whole detective going through. I think we could have lost that whole thing. I don't know that it was really necessary. I think
It's Korean cinema though, so there has to be a detective involved.
It has to be. Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you there.
could have
Although
been consolidated a little bit and made it more of a journey and more of it instead of.
I didn't mind the detective because for me, ultimately, what he brings is look, and you think of those traditional tropes that you run across, right? He brings a sense of there. He's supposed to be the comedic relief. He's the one. He's not great at his job. He's not bad at his job. He says silly things. He says, so he kind of brought that comedic element to it.
but Brandon, I'll agree with you. There were too many moving parts.
Yeah.
And it didn't, I still don't really understand what happened at all. And so I agree that I think the detective storyline could have been axed, but I also like those characters more than any other character. So I would have been bummed if they didn't have that because I liked the cop and I liked the storyline with his buddy that he saved. Like I like those guys, but it was kind of unnecessary to have it in the film.
Yeah, I like the cop. Well, the cop also introduces who the monster ultimately takes over at the end as well, besides the young monk. Right. And it's A-B line storytelling, right? It's like you have the A storyline with the main monk and the young monk, and then you have a B storyline with the cop, and eventually those two storylines are going to converge.
And I gotta say, I couldn't stand the young monk. That kid, man, I wanted to smack him. So annoying.
He was fine to me.
Oh, like, and Jess watched it with me. She loved him. She thought he was adorable. I couldn't stand it. Like, to me, it took me out of the movie. Like, why does he need the guy to take the meat off his food?
Because he's a monk. He doesn't want to eat meat, right?
Well, yeah, you don't have to eat it, but take it off your food. You don't have to, like, why do you need the other guy to do it for you?
It just shows his devotion. Here's the thing. I argue that there was 3 storylines happening. You've got the detective trying to figure out why people are shrink wrapping. You've got the young older monk storyline, and then you have the evil, like the monster storyline. And I think you could have gotten rid of the detective one and those two journeys.
I'll disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. So here's the deal. You ready?
I'm ready for it. Give it
for
to
a
me.
lesson that I don't know what I'm going to say. No, I agree with what your storylines are. I just mean, I don't think you can get rid of them. The one I would have got rid of probably because then and the convolution is there. There are elements that it's a little bit weighty, like let's simplify. So I do agree with you, but I'd have got rid of the entirety of the ghost of the virgin psychic. Like there was no need for it really.
I didn't get it.
It didn't really reveal itself as to why it was there, right? Like it didn't matter. And that was a storyline. They were trying to make it bigger than it was, and it just didn't have the weight that it needed to help the story. So I'd have got rid of that entirely, and then I'd have refocused on the monk himself, the older monk himself. They kind of did at the end of the movie where you get a little bit of you understand that it's the kid and he's, like he had to show compassion and all that stuff. But there's convolution there to the story. And I'd have got rid of that site. She didn't, then all of a sudden she was a ghost.
Yeah.
And then it was like, what? And so I was like, those are elements that I was confused on in terms of too much complexity.
Yeah. Just mistaken identities and just like trying to figure out who's like, got to kill this girl, but she's already dead. But then jumping to the very end. So like, well, so is she alive for realsies, or was she just like the whole chain thing at the desert? The desert end scene didn't make a lick of fucking sense to me. I don't understand. I mean, I understand putting the thing back, the eyeball, I guess. But how do you get the eyeball if you killed it? There's a lot I don't understand.
Yeah,
the ending did. The ending started to fade off a little bit. It could have, and I'll tell. I think it could have ended much earlier. And this is a thing with filmmakers. They don't know when to cut it off. Peter Jackson included. So we're talking about Lord of the Rings.
Of the 4-hour director's cut of each one of those movies.
Let's cut it off a lot earlier.
Well, this is coming out. It's going to be 8.5 days of just like.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. I think the ending drops it, right? It dropped and also look, if you're taking, there's a couple things that I didn't like. So let's highlight those.
All right.
Okay. One thing is I don't love, and this goes back to what you're saying, Brandon, and both of you, which is you're talking about the convolution of the story. And I particularly in this case didn't love the editing style in terms of the transitions from scene to scene. I don't necessarily love when they use either a dip to black and then they come back, and they're trying to reset the story. To me, the story should be able to transition by itself without a cut or without a dip to black or without a let's reset the entirety of the narrative. Does that make sense? And so every 5 minutes or even less, really, there's a dip to black or a cut to black and then a fade back in. And that, to me, in any film, and not just this particular one, is, and it can work sometimes. I'm not going out here saying that this can never be part of movie making, but it oftentimes, for me, is detrimental to my interest in the story to a level, right? To a degree where it takes me out, then they want to reset me into something new, and then I got to reestablish. And I think editorially, transitions, for the most part, should be able to seamlessly cut all the way through. And the transitions between scenes, whether it's location to location or character to character, they should continue seamlessly without those kind of cut to blacks. And it just was too often. I don't mind it coming in once in a while, but it was like every 3 minutes, it was let's reset.
Do you know what I think of every time I see a cut to black in a movie? Commercial break.
Yeah.
It feels like it's a commercial break. And it's not the format for that. Again, like there are narratively it can work, but that's almost the exception, like it's not very often. And so it just feels like a TV movie when they go to that. I agree.
It's like the POV hit over the head.
Yeah.
There's other ways you can do that.
That was one thing. And then the other, and this isn't a knock on him, I actually think they did a good job. I don't know. I'm up in the air about it. I'm on the fence about the special effects. I'm on the fence.
That's where the amateurish sort of like first time sort of stuff happening. That's where I was getting a lot of the vibe. I mean, they were fine. They were not amazing, but I was like, that was After Effects in an afternoon, kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really where the supernatural vibe came in, because especially early on in that show, if you look at those special effects, they were not good. They're all, like so dated. And so that's kind of what I was feeling. Like it's like the eye and the cheek just didn't look. There's just something wasn't right with it. It needed a little bit more massaging to make it look right.
Yeah.
Because it could have been a very creepy thing. That's a creepy, good idea.
Yeah.
If you want to scare someone, but it's just, man, you really got to pull it off.
And there were these moments where they used, I thought, cool sound effects and cool camera techniques to create that horror type vibe, where you think of tradition, like where he sees the young woman in the alley, right? The high school girl kind of dressed in the high school uniform. And then she does the weird, like to me, just the practical effect of her smiling, like doing was creepy.
So creepy. Like that kind of stuff. She nailed it. And also the other guy who does it later nailed it too. But that could have been something that came across as really cheesy and really stupid. You got to have an actor who can pull that off. And I thought she nailed it.
Mm-hmm. There was also a couple of interesting camera moves that I thought were admirable. Like at the very end, when it's tracking along that tree and you're not really sure of your orientation, and then it ends up being upside down and he slowly flips it around. I thought that was kind of a cool move, and it actually did say something to me. I'm like, all right, I didn't notice the camera move, but I kind of understood why they did it. It's like to kind of just throw you off a little bit. And I was like, all right, I'm okay with that particular move. And but no, I mean, it just had the vibe of a lot of first-time filmmakers. Maybe there's definitely some seasoned people in there, but just it was kind of a mix. You can just feel that mix
Brandon always comes in and he's like, "Oh, I can do it better."
I've never said that once.
That's the vibe I'm getting. You're like, "Oh, give me that shit." Like, you said you're gonna do the third Halloween, right?
No, I'm making eyes without a face.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. You probably could do that better. I think we all could.
We all could do that.
Pretty dating.
Try to get some French influence and just.
But I mean, I thought it was. If you think about, I also thought that it was filmed. I mean, it was filmed well. The cinematography was nice. I thought it was put together. It looked clean. It looked professional. I thought whoever was behind the camera did a good job.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought that was it looked beautiful. It was too dark at moments, but that's okay. I mean, it's supposed to be kind of a dark film, but I thought I mean, filmmaking wise, I thought it was technically done very well. I just think there's some story problems that drags it down quite a bit.
Yeah. The convolution of the story, too many elements going on. Not enough, too many kind of in some ways, for me at least, maybe even you have too many antagonists. You have the old monk, the new monk, like maybe just really, I mean, I think that the primary one, if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with the old monk because he's got to overcome the past. He's got to overcome that thing that he struggled with throughout the entirety of the movie. Perspectively of the audience, the POV is the young monk, but I think that becomes convoluted, right? You have all these characters. You're not sure who to, I mean, you know who to root for, but you're not sure which one's the primary, right? They're both kind of just there.
Well, and
it's
then
like,
adding, go ahead.
No, I was simply going to say, because we're talking Lord of the Rings, we have Sam and Frodo, right? It's like we have two people. And if you think about the story, I mean, this could be debatable. All the Lord of the Rings heads out there are going to be like, that is blasphemous. I mean, Frodo is the leader. Sorry. No, he's not, says Brandon. It's Sam. Sam saves him at the end. But anyway, I just feel like too many things. I just want one person to root for. And there's a simplicity to it. Like that helps with the simplicity if we narrow down the focus to one person.
So that's the thing. Like Lord of the Rings, it starts off super simple. Very, very simple. Like as big of a film as it is and as big of a story as it is, it starts off with one thing. And then as the movies and books progress, the story gets more and more widespread and big. And I think this one tried to just cram too much shit in there at once.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Lord of the Rings, he also gives himself that bandwidth. He gives himself the ability, like you said, to start small and grow into the larger picture.
Right.
Yeah. And here you don't have the time, right? Because you have 2 hours. You don't have 6 hours or 6+ hours, 1,200 hours if it's the director's cut. And Peter Jackson just says, like, use all the film. Just use it all. Don't even make cuts.
Yeah.
The same scene you see like The Master, then you see all of the coverage both ways.
You hear action and cut on the end of every clip.
I would have liked to have seen, one thing I did like is that they gave the protagonist kind of even though he was a good guy, he gave him a task, like a moral issue task: kill one person, save the world. I do enjoy that. Because it's the struggle of, the greater good versus, you've got this human right in front of you. I feel like when that's done well, that you feel the conflict yourself. And I did enjoy that particular aspect of it. Even though the person they had to murder, I guess, didn't exist, or did we?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that actually just kind of, I think you just shed light on why I hated the fact that she was a ghost. Mm-hmm. Because that's a super interesting moral dilemma.
Yes.
That we can connect with. And, mm-hmm. and it makes you wonder, how is this going to end up? And then when it's like, oh, just kidding, she's already dead. That dilemma's gone. Like, it's not even a thing anymore. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I couldn't figure out why I was so taken aback by the fact that she was a ghost. Like, I understand they're trying to do a twist and whatever. Like, it was surprising, but it also was like, oh, that's stupid. And I think that's why, because I was very interested in the problem that they faced. Are they going to kill this poor girl, or are they going to not? And, and so I think that's why I was so perturbed by the fact that they they pulled a cop out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Yeah,
explain the ending of the movie. And another thing I would have liked to have seen, I would have liked to have seen more of a show off or showdown at the end. It kind of seemed like kind of petered out a little bit, just as far as, I mean, I dug the symbols on the handle, and I was like, he's got an axe. Let's do this. Maybe have some minions come out and just like really. I would have liked more of a, because it seemed like it was setting up for this big thing. I mean, with the preparations and putting their blood over everything, and like kind of this, the self-contained thing to hold it, and just kind of like, and he just walked off. I'm like, oh, come on, let's have.
I liked that portion of the end. I liked because I liked that the old monk had to put the symbol of his own blood on the kid in order to release the monster to go into him, because the monster has to go into the next available body. And the next available body was the old monk. I liked that.
That was fine. But the battle, like, there should have been something better leading up to that point. Like, that should have been like kind of the very, very, just didn't seem like it was much of a, then the cop comes in and kind of like, well, he's going to be a kebab. Great. Whatever. But.
Which was an awesome kill, by the way.
It was a pretty awesome kill.
The fact that he threw him 30 feet into the air, into a branch right through the chest.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
Think of that, boss.
That was pretty sweet. I like that. I had one question. This is just kind of a throwaway part, but I didn't understand it. At one point, the demon has a gun pointed at just like a throwaway cop character.
Oh, yeah.
And he shoots it, but the guy doesn't get shot. What the hell was that about? Did we miss something? Did they cut something away? I didn't understand the point of that.
Blank? Like, I wasn't sure.
Then I thought, like, the fact that the gun didn't shoot, I thought it was like, oh, that's going to be a plot point, that maybe there are blanks in the gun. Yeah. But then later on, he does shoot someone. So I didn't understand that part.
Neither did I.
Okay.
No, that didn't.
I don't know that they understood it, but they did it.
I mean, why not? Because we don't see that cop ever again. Why not just shoot him? It makes the demon even worse, Scarier. I don't get it.
Yeah, he's more evil. He's just murdering people.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would have taken guns out of the whole thing.
Yeah. It's not a gun movie.
No, it just didn't make.
Well, if it's a true monster,
that
was the one thing. Like, what's the monster's capabilities? It can only be dangerous and lethal if it's possessed in a body, right?
Yeah.
If it goes through one of the gates of human flesh or something.
Stepping stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Otherwise, if it's not in body or it doesn't overtake a body, it doesn't have power because it just has to float around. I can't kill people if it's not in.
Well, because that was just the eye getting back to the master. I think if it got back to the master, then it'd be like,
then the full power is released. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just the ring getting back to him, basically. Again, to use the Lord of the Rings reference.
Yeah, now that you're saying that, we've been talking about it. This just turned into a Lord of the Rings podcast on Tame Aperture, everybody.
It is.
But I did like I thought the ending was too long. What's the best horror scene in the movie? That's my question for both of you. It could be any of the scenes, whether the possession or a killing or something. What's the best horror scene? I didn't
really think there were any, to be honest.
Oh, there is.
There are a couple. So for me, either the girl smiling, I thought that was creepy, or the guy is at towards the beginning of the film when the hand reaches over his shoulder. I thought that was pretty creepy.
Yeah, in the shadow, or the one with the
not the shadow,
the older woman.
Yeah. The one was it? I can't remember what.
There was two. There was the first one was creepy. The second one, he seemed to be expecting. He was like, "No, George."
It was the first one where you actually see the hand come over the shoulder. I thought that was pretty creepy.
My favorite horror scene of the movie was, and it felt very trope to a degree, and I thought it was going to go another direction, and they didn't take it there, and that's okay. Was the guy in the tunnel on the motorcycle who sees the stranded girl, and this is 100% horror film.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have a woman by herself in the middle of the night in an alleyway, and a dude comes by. You think he's going to rescue her, take her back, and then he walks up to her. I liked it. Was creepy. It wasn't over the top, but like the look on her face, the stranded, stringling, wet hair, the little tilt of the head, the cut to the feet with all the bloody feet and the nylons walking toward him, and then it overtakes him as the next quote unquote victim, right? It was cool. And there was this is the thing about the movie was there's little things like that throughout. It's like there's it's very supernatural, like you were saying, Alan. But there are glimpses of like just little paintings of like true embodied horror of demons, right? Like the girl smiling, the shadow shot of the monk in the temple with the little hand, the shadow comes over the top and reaches over his shoulder. And so he's hinting in these little stylistic ways of horror. But I think overall the movie's more mild toned than that. But I like those little elements that he threw in there. That made it fun. I actually wish we would have seen more of that.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
To make it a little darker, a little harder punching.
Because I didn't get that feeling I get in other similar movies, that just kind of like that. That never happened to me once in the film. The smiles were fun, were unexpected.
There's not a lot of jump scares in this movie, right?
I got a little bored. I would get distracted watching this. There are quite a few times I had to rewind it because I just wasn't paying attention.
Brandon never identified his favorite horror section. He says there is none.
Not really. I mean, if I had to put something, it'd probably be the smiles, just because they were unexpected and they did some nice sound design there to kind of make them a little snappier. So I was like, all right, that was kind of fun.
Brandon's like, oh wait, I didn't watch the movie. Wait, what are we doing?
What? What are you talking about?
I'm just giving you a hard time because it's fun.
It is.
Am I mean, Brandon? Am I being mean to you?
You're never mean to me.
This is what I love about Brandon more than anything. This is one of my favorite. I love a lot of things about Brandon, but he doesn't take it too. He knows I'm joking. I can say things, and he knows I'm just playing, and I love that he's lighthearted about it. So,
well, I mean, I turn off the podcast and I cry for an hour.
I was going to say, you should see the tear-stained pillows he sleeps on every night.
Just sobs in Lisa's shoulder. He's so mean to me.
Why do you think he left the podcast for 2 years?
That's probably what it is. That's probably what it is. Brandon knows. Here's the thing, though. Brandon knows in his heart of hearts he's one of my favorite people. He already knows that. And he knows that. You know why he knows that? Because I've told him that. That's how
you told me straight up.
So, okay, let's move on to let's kind of get into some is there any we wanted to cover briefly, maybe Brandon, you can cover this section. I feel like it would be appropriate. I just wanted to cover this kind of tragedy that happened down in New Mexico this last week. It's not our place to really talk about it, but I just think as filmmaker, there's a level of respect and admiration for the tragedy that happened. Do you mind just kind of sharing it, and then we can maybe briefly discuss it?
Yeah, I mean, having worked on a few features that have involved firearms, we've gone through those safety procedures. I have been an actor that has fired a weapon at another actor. And I have to tell you, the very first time I did it was for a tribute to The Matrix, which was made in like 1999. And I played an agent, and I did fire a weapon at a fellow actor, and we burned one take because I hesitated to do it, and I couldn't, because it is, I mean, we had a sheriff and a prop master there, and they went through all the procedures and double checked everything, and so it was as safe as it could be, but there's still that risk. And especially now with what we can do with visual effects, there's absolutely no reason to fire blanks on a set. And I just feel like the risk isn't there when you can accomplish something visually in post. You still make a gun that does the kick, so you know it can still have the motion, everything like that, but there's no reason to put a round in there. And unfortunately, it sounds like they cut a lot of corners and people were already concerned about safety. And having been in the position of the first assistant director before professionally, safety is absolutely paramount. And this is a tragedy that could absolutely have been completely avoided. And I just feel I feel I feel horrible for the crew around them because everyone's going to second guess themselves and wondering if I was the one. Was it me? I feel bad for Alec Baldwin. That can't be. He's probably in a dark place right now, going through knowing that he literally pulled the trigger on someone's life, and that's. But I mean, as a filmmaker myself, if it is a thing with a gun, I'm committing to never rely on blanks ever again. There's other ways you can do it. It's so easy to do it now. There's no reason.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, which I'm assuming is very few of you, this is a tragedy that happened down on a New Mexico film set with one of the cinematographers. Her name was Helena Hutchins, and she was killed on set, which is a real, just really sad. So,
yeah, during the rehearsal, even so, she was standing behind the camera. The director was behind her. I'm just trying. There's no. People are saying there was a live round in there, but again, having worked on a couple of sets, the live rounds don't even make it to the set. There's no reason to bring a live round to the set. So, well, kind of what happened with Brandon Lee in The Crow. Just a little bit of something gets in there, and it's still a project. It doesn't have to be a bullet.
Yep.
If something's in that chamber, it still gets propelled forward, and it can.
Yeah, I mean, safety on set, as you mentioned, Brandon, is like number one. And look, I'm not here to speculate on the news of what happened. I'll let the investigators do that. I just know that it's a tragedy, and it's really sad that something like that had to happen. And from my own experience, like one thing I know is like in two forms of experience, one professionally and one academically. I mean, we get students that would used to come to us and go, "We're going to do a gun scene," and we'd say, "No, you're not. You can't do it." And if you got like Todd and I both at the Art Institute, we tried. I don't know whether students listened to us. If students came to me or Todd with a gun scene, we'd say no gun scenes.
We did one under the Art Institute. Just background, Gabe and I met as he was my instructor and I was a student. But we did one, but we did it with a fake gun, but we went around.
Airsoft gun.
Yeah, it was an airsoft gun. Yeah. And we did it with police involvement. We did it in a neighborhood, and we knocked every single door. We said, "This is what we're going to be doing." The police are involved. The police was there. He double checked the weapon for us, just to make sure it was an airsoft gun. And we did the scene and nothing happened.
And this goes outside of like gun safety too. Look, when you're on set, hold those. I mean, safety first and always. Like if you think you're not taking enough precaution, take way more. Like just always go on the upside of precaution. So
yeah, I saw First AD, and it was just for a rehearsal, and there was a prop gun. But what he did is he pointed to the floor and he went through the chamber 3 times, and just to double check, even though trigger wasn't being pulled, he just. Okay, cold gun.
Well, and in all honesty, nobody but a gun wrangler should handle the gun. Not even the first AD. Like
that's correct.
The gun wrangler should handle the gun. He should hand it directly to the actor. The actor should do whatever they've been trained to do, and then the gun should go right back to the gun wrangler. No one else should handle a gun except for that person that's been dedicated and assigned and has some sort of certification or professional expertise in that field. But it's a tragedy. It's a bummer. I feel bad for, of course, her family and all those involved because it's a tough time.
It's awful. But Gabe, I got to ask, you're a teacher. You taught a lot of film students. How many projects do not have guns in them?
This is a great question, Alan, because the other thing we would always say is write a story without a gun, right? Write a story without a gun.
I mean, I was in film school. Every single project, everybody has a gun.
This brings up a good point, Alan, because to me it's a great point, which is why do we immediately, if you're a filmmaker, and I'm guilty of it too, right? I'm guilty of it too. I think every filmmaker, anyone who's written a story for a movie or a script, has fallen into this. Why do we always revert to a gun immediately?
I don't know exactly, but I can guess that it's tension. I mean, that's the only. I mean, it's
True.
an easy way to build tension if you're inexperienced.
True.
That's my guess.
I mean, there's a few places like it would make sense to me that I would do it if I'm doing a historical, based on a true story, like
an Arab. I get it. I just mean like what I always saw. To Alan's question is like you write a short film and somehow, some way, a gun always just and it's not even necessary. I mean, I agree with you, Alan. That's a good point, which is it does build tension. So that's an immediate, no pun intended, trigger to build tension, right? But like, why are we always reverting to that? So not to make lighthearted of something that obviously wasn't, like I said, tragedy. And I hope everyone involved can kind of move forward and they can get things solved and figured out. A real bummer.
She was our age too. She was born in 79.
Yep. She's our age, basically. So it's a tough thing. I have a friend who's actually went to school with her at AFI. So he knew her quite well. Actually made a movie with her. So on a lighter note, we'll get back to Eighth Night, which is a Korean film currently on Netflix. Brandon's possible favorite of horror month. Aside from the two that will not even air, they won't even see the light of day, is possible, which is Sleepaway Camp, which was his. So we for those listening, look, we made 2 podcasts. Gabe really messed up. Let's just call it what it is. I'll take full accountability. We filmed 2 podcasts. One was Sleepaway Camp, which is a movie I picked from the 80s. Brandon's, besides this film, that's his favorite film.
Correct.
Right, give us your summary, your rundown, your rating on Eighth Night on Netflix.
I would have given it higher if the story was a little bit more solid. It felt like they probably wrote it out longer, but maybe in the editorial process, some things got taken out that might have bridged a couple of gaps for me a little bit easier.
I wanted the movie longer.
Or yeah,
Peter Jackson
choices. But ultimately, I always go back to what Gabe says too, because I've said that 1,000 times. Like, but they made a movie, and they accomplished it. It was done well. I wouldn't call it beautiful cinematography, but it was done well. And am I giving my rating right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you a rating. Oh, I have to see. I will give it 6.5 meatless hamburgers.
So is that 6.5?
6.5 meatless hamburgers.
Meatless hamburgers. That's a little nod out to. And before, and Brandon, I keep doing, I did this last time, so my apologies. Brandon's already given his rating. I forgot, I had I had one Google review that I needed to read because that's all there is. At least that I can find. So Brandon comes in though at 6.5 meatless hamburgers, otherwise known as a vegetarian burger.
Or just buns.
Just buns that haven't, it has to be removed by someone else. That's what qualifies this one.
Wait, so did he just not want to touch the meat? I mean, that's
fine.
fine.
It's you don't touch the
That's
dead
fine.
animal.
Like, I get it. You can get that meat off your burger without touching it.
Yeah, you just dump it over.
Yeah. It's not hard. That it just, all right. Doesn't matter. I could go on. That was just part of the character.
This is what Alan's getting hung up on, of all things.
He's like a freaking baby or like a dog or something. It's like he has
It is very babyish in this film, but I think that's the character too. He's trying to be there's a naivete to his character because he hasn't seen the world.
Oh, and I get it, and I understand that, and I understand that's the point of the character, but also you don't have to go that over the top.
He's like, Alan's like, also why?
Yeah, why?
Here's the quick review. 4 out of 5. It says it's slow-paced, interesting, and a good movie. A great one-time watch. It was confusing at the beginning. Then, when you feel like you've started following, they throw a twist to confuse. Actually,
I agree.
That's a pretty fair. There's a few more ratings in there, actually. I was trying to find a 1 star. Here's my last one. We'll just do 2 today. The one is 1 out of 5 from Skrillex Panda 3 months ago. Some of these handles are fantastic. What's the handle? The people are way more creative than me. Skrillex hand.
I know.
What was the? Oh, what was the one? Oh, damn it! I'm not going to remember the one from last cast. It was
was it a Kubrick based one?
Notorious.
Oh, what was it? It was so good.
It was a Notorious B.I.G. in combination with something else. It was called Notorious.
It was great.
Oh,
whatever
Notorious. Notorious Stardust.
Something like
You're
that.
close.
It was a David Bowie Notorious B.I.G. mix, and I loved it.
Yeah.
The mythological part of the movie is good, but the screenplay is bad. No depth in characters and can't connect with any of them, except the monk and the kid. It's not a horror movie, so no jump scares and not too many plot holes. Huh? I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. That's 1 out of 5.
Say would not recommend it to anyone.
Yeah.
Oh.
Skrillex Panda's like, get that shit out of here. And then Nick, 3 months ago, I got to read the other 1 out of 5. It was terrible. I never leave movie reviews, but unfortunately, it was that bad.
Those are my favorite reviews when the movie's so bad that they just can't help themselves but have to review it.
And he says, Alan, he says, all the good scenes are in the preview. Waste of 2 hours of your life. 15 people found that helpful.
I mean, it's not necessarily wrong. It's not right, but it's not wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. This movie, it's too long. I will say that. The movie's too long.
Agreed.
It's slow at points and it is confusing, but once it gets going, it's enjoyable. Like it's an enjoyable movie. I really think it is. We kind of shit on it. We kind of brought up all the flaws, and there are a lot of flaws, but I did enjoy it. Like I didn't think it was bad. I enjoyed it for what it was. Don't go in thinking it's a horror movie because it's not really. Go in expecting kind of that fantasy vibe, and I think you'll be fine. Like it's supernatural. It that show is not a great show. It's kind of a guilty pleasure for me. It's kind of a soap opera for people who like horror, and that's a little bit of what this is. Like it's fine. It's good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I'm gonna come in with 6.8 eyeballs.
Nice.
6.8 eyeballs. Makes sense. Is that the red or the black?
Red. I'm putting red in there.
Black. We never really saw the black one, did we? Just in artist renditions. Like this is what we think it might look like.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we saw the black one.
They didn't have a budget to create the black one. They could only create one, so they had to choose red. Red makes most sense to choose.
Exactly.
Okay, so nice. We had Brandon at 6.5 and Alan was it 6.8?
Yep.
So I'm gonna Rotten Tomatoes comes in at with this one at 63%, 63% from the critics and 41% from the audience.
Oof.
How do you think
Netflix fresh for the audience, but it's fresh for the critics, so that's interesting.
How do you think Netflix chooses their films? Because it seems like sometimes they just go for just not good films.
I think they do packages. I think they'll scoop up like 10 Korean films, and I honestly think it is like a baker's dozen situation. I think it's here.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they'll usually slate them out with, like Brandon said, a grouping. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times there'll be a partnership or something with a production company. I know they're doing a lot of stuff in Spain right now. If you watch and scroll through Netflix, you see a lot of Spanish and productions because they're able to do it. I don't want to say cheaply because they're still spending a good amount of money, but pretty high production value. And I don't know, I haven't watched a lot of the stories, but Netflix has a ton of those. I was watching it's just Spanish films too. It's
just interesting that they a streaming service that started off so strong with their content. And we're talking about House of Cards is like the first series that really launched this kind of stuff. And it was fantastic when it first started. And then little by little, Netflix just kind of went downhill. And now it just kind of feels like when they release something, it's good. I'm surprised.
Well, then you move in, I think, with the scalability, right? Because they grew so fast. You just look at growth. In other words, you're like, we're just going to have a portfolio of ton of stuff. You know, like before there was a wine taster effect. It's like we're gonna bring in House of Cards. We're gonna acquire the rights to Breaking Bad. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna wine taste this. And then it grew so fast. I think they just started going, what do we got to get content.
And that's true. And it's kind of like what HBO did. HBO started with like The Sopranos and Curb Your Enthusiasm, and they came strong.
Yes.
And then they just kind of went downhill. And again, like now they're going into the true crime documentary stuff, and that's definitely better. But it just feels like when they have an original show that's good, I'm surprised these days. And which is so weird to think about, because if you would have told me 10, 15 years ago that HBO wouldn't be good, I'd be shocked.
Right. They were definitely. It's funny to watch that. It's not like I'm happy to have all these streaming services available, but it is interesting to watch a bit of that decline in certain. And I think you just can't do it. I don't know that you can hold that longevity of excellence when you're trying to grow, because you just need to put shit into the portfolio.
True.
Also looking at, I also see the individual filmmakers and all of that, because it's about finding the right filmmakers, because it's not like HBO is actually doing it. I mean, they contract, for example, Chernobyl, unbelievably great miniseries, but that was from a filmmaker, and they've decided like, yes, we're going to do this. And I think like I'm loving the Stranger Things. That's a Netflix series I've really enjoyed. But I think I've told this to Gabe before, and I think we're kind of in the golden era of content that's made for us, our age, and that's going to go away. And I'm just going to enjoy every minute of it, because I know, I mean, I see this shit that my kids watch on they just watch people playing video games. Like,
yeah, next Netflix will be hiring YouTubers.
They kind of, so we just watched Free Guy.
I don't know what that is.
It's the Ryan Reynolds movie. He's a video game character.
Oh, I liked Free Guy.
But they had YouTubers in there, like actual YouTubers.
Yeah, actual.
Like as cameos, like gamer YouTubers. And my kids cheered.
Free Guy's also, it was on Disney Plus.
Free Guy?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Or no, you're right. YouTube. Sorry, I said Disney. You're right. Sorry.
But yeah, when we get those original stories, I think HBO really does well with historical dramas. Because again, Chernobyl I've watched it 3 times. I just so good. I don't know.
I mean, Free Guy's huge too, though. You have Sean Levy, and like there's big time directors and people involved, right?
Yeah, and a ton of cameos, and Ryan Reynolds is hot as butter right now. So
I like him. I think he's funny. I liked Free Guy. I thought it was silly, and it was a good watch. I enjoyed myself.
It was
Let's
a
move
good
into
popcorn flick. It was a good popcorn
which
flick.
I love. I love those.
Did you watch Midnight Mass? Yeah.
No, not yet, but it's on the list for sure.
I fell asleep with it on last night, and so I don't know. I can't tell you if it's good or not, but all I know is the parts that I kept waking up to were super boring.
I would give it. It's a little bit of a slow start.
I probably won't make it. Then.
Boring, like debates about whether religion should be taught in school. It's like I have that in real life. I don't need to watch this, but I'll give it a chance. I'll give it a chance. I'm talking from someone who is just kind of in and out while it was on. So
it sounds like me with The Witch, Alan.
Yeah, probably a little bit.
I would say the two are very similar in pacing. Let's just put it that way.
Oh,
I mean, obviously, it's a little bit more, compact.
You love The Witch, though.
No, I do love The Witch. I can handle it in a feature. When a series, like I don't want to have to watch 5 episodes to finally be good, because there's too much stuff out there that's really good. That if I gotta wait 5 episodes for a series to get good, I'm not gonna last that long. 3?
No, the first 2, and then the third one. That's when stuff starts happening.
All right. I mean, I have not watched it, so I'm coming from someone who's just seen bits and pieces of it. So I'll give it a try.
Neither have I, and I'll it's on the list. I think eventually I'll get around to it. Let me jump into my score on Eighth Night. So this trailer, it tricked me a little bit. And usually I don't watch trailers. I usually don't. This
And
trailer tricked me into thinking it was something it wasn't. The synopsis that I read tricked me into thinking it was something it wasn't. So for that, I'm a little disappointed, right? Because I didn't. But overall, I mean, there's elements to the movie that I enjoyed. It's not like you mentioned, Alan. I don't know, and I would agree. It's not really a horror film. It's got a little bit of mystery and thriller and supernatural, and there's glimpses, like I mentioned, just of like 10-second shots that feel horror. It's not extraordinary. It's not the best movie that you're ever going to watch. Technically sound. I think it's put together well. Little convolution in the story, like was mentioned. But I think, to be honest, I think they missed it. I think they missed the opportunity. I think that it's a better concept and it could have been a lot darker and a little more sinister than they made it. They made it a little bit higher end, higher fluff. Nothing wrong with that. I think for the first time, if this is indeed his first movie, he freaking stomped the shit out of it because it's on a first-time director. He did a great job. I just think they missed the boat on the darkness. So with that said, I'm going to come in we had a 6.5 from Brandon, a 6.8 from Alan, and I'm going to come in lower than both of you. Not because I don't enjoy the movie, but it's not rewatchable. I don't need to see it again. And like I said at the beginning, it's good. It's not great. It's not bad. It's just, it is what it is, which means it's forgettable.
Yeah.
So 6.2. 6.2 white sneakers.
Nice. And by the way, I want to mention, you gave this a 6.2. We talked about bad taste.
Yeah.
Bad taste, you gave a 7.3.
Yeah, because I do like, look, admittedly, what did I give Sleepaway Camp? That's a shit film.
Let's see. Sleepaway Camp gave 6.9.
Okay,
Oh my
so
God.
that's what I mean. I like.
Wow.
Wait, what did Brandon give Sleepaway Camp? A 5?
I'm
something?
sure. I was like, what was it?
4.2.
Lucky they got that.
And what did you give it, Alan?
I gave Sleepaway Camp
7.0.
7.2.
Yeah, me and Alan we're fools for shitty B movies.
Yeah.
I do. I like shitty B movies. I'm not gonna lie.
Again, like if I'd have known what I was going into, I probably would have been better. But
No,
I
that's
can't-
the cop
I
out.
have to give the rating that I felt at the time. I can't go back in time. Because like when I watched like Troll 2, I knew what I was getting into. I love Troll 2.
No, that's a shit movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, popcorn scene sex. Hello.
But the
Bologna sandwiches. The bologna sandwich.
the documentary about Troll 2 is much better than the movie Troll 2.
Correct.
It's really good. I think it's called Best
Troll 2 is
Worst
horrible.
Movie.
Yeah, Troll 2 is horrible.
So it sounds like any movie that doesn't hit the mark should just create a documentary about how shitty the movie was, and it'll be better.
Yep.
Well, that's actually true with Citizen Kane. Had I not watched the document like with Citizen Kane beforehand and understood the context and the contemporary things that are happening at the time, I wouldn't have enjoyed Citizen Kane as much.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think.
I wouldn't have understand the Pulitzer, whatever. I mean,
Okay, we're ending this podcast.
We're going. Okay, I'm sorry.
We're
But we
talking
get
about getting convoluted. Talking about getting convoluted. We're talking about this filmmaker convoluted. We're all over the damn map. Okay, let's end it out. This is Gabe signing off with Alan and Brandon for the Tame Aperture podcast. This is the last podcast for Horror Month. Alan will probably no longer want to join us on the show because it's not horror anymore. Although, Alan, I looked at our portfolio and really we're about 50-50 horror anyway.
We don't ever stray too far.
You're not straying too far.
We get a little into the Criterion collection, and then we come back to the schlock.
Yes, we like to get back into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
That's the Tame Aperture podcast. Go check us out at tameaperture.com and on all streaming platforms. This is Gabe for Brandon and Alan signing off.
The Tame Aperture podcast is produced by Dutch Angle Pictures in association with Studio B Productions. Listen, watch, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube.